Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Ansari, Department of Political Science, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Today I'm going to talk about meaning of state. Now this is my second lecture on the same topic, just to clarify the conceptions and misconceptions about the term state, which is often used with different other words. So here we go. State, we know, is a central subject of political science. So it becomes necessary that this word state itself should be studied minutely. This word state is used in a number of contexts. We can talk about state of France or Britain or United States of America as a state itself, or China or India as a state, etc. All these are called states. And along with that, we also called one of the states California or New York, or out of the 50 states that have formed United States of America. They're also called states. Now, according to the Constitution of India, India is the combination of states. So here also the term state is used. So Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, Kashmir, etc. They are also states. So not only that, many landlords, they called their property as states, like Balrampur state or Mahmudabad state. And there were states with that name, and those who were the owners, they called themselves the king of that state. So not only in Hindi language, in other languages, especially in English, various names of political science have been used in varied meanings, where France, Britain, etc. are called states in the same way. Kashmir, Jaipur, New York, they're also called states. But in political science, we have to propagate the state which has a difference from these terms which are used for state. Now, when we in political science call state, we mean a state having a sovereignty. From the viewpoint of politics, any state which is under others' rule, which does not have complete sovereignty and which is controlled by external authority, such state cannot be called a state. So though Kashmir, New York, Bihar, etc. are commonly called state, but the state that we refer to in political science is different from these states. So France, China, India, etc., all those states which are sovereign, only those are called state. So today's lecture is going to focus on the state term itself and the confusion that is often brought in because of the use of this term for other places as well, in other places. So talking about the characteristics of state that we in political science refer to and propagate about, there are essential elements of state, that is people, land, rule, and authority. So any community which does not contain all these four things cannot be called state. Community should be of human beings. It must have a definite area, land, or territory which belongs only to them, and no outer power claims any kind of authority over it or doesn't have any right to control it. Moreover, it's also necessary that this community is united in politically they are united, and they should have ultimate authority on themselves, and no other state should have more power over it. Now let's examine definitions, some of the definitions, to see how state is conceived by different political thinkers and what state that we are talking about political science means and how it differs. So let's take up the definition of British scholar Holland. He has explained the characteristics of state as: state is a group or community of human beings which is inhabited on a fixed area and in which the wishes of one particular class or majority is materialized in comparison to the others. Now, in this characteristics given by Holland, the following points are stressed. Now, the first point he has stressed is the state is a community of human beings inhabited in a fixed or on a fixed area. Now, in this community, wishes of some people is dominant and others have to surrender in front of it. Now, even if theirs are against this wish, they have to suppress themselves. This wish could be either be the wish of even a minority or a majority of the people. Now, usually, in democratic states, wishes of majority are fulfilled, but seldom some unexceptionally powerful person or a class, in spite of being in minority, can rule the majority on basis of their wealth, intellect, or valor. Now let's take up another definition. Now this is definition of Filmer, and he characterizes state as a community of human beings inhabited permanently on a definite area and land. This should be well united with one law, one practice, one rituals, and which, through the well arranged government, should have complete control and authority on all the people and resources presented in that area, and which has a right to connect or disconnect with any community or to establish any kind of international relations. Now, in that broad definition, the characteristics that he has brought out, so all the four elements, that is the land, people, government, and authority, has been included. But he has included one more, and along with that, one more thing has been added, and he informs us saying that all the citizens of the state should be united with, he says, one law, one practice, one rituals, oneness of law, practices, and customs originates in a speciality we in political science refer them as nationality. So nationality is different from state. So in the history, various states have had this distinct, this instinct that all people should be united in a community, and all residents of the state should be the part of that nationality. Now, Filmer has informed about this fact in his character of state. On the basis of this character, all those states which have people of different caste and nationality are not or cannot be called a state. Now, let's take up another definition to be more clear about what state means. So, Garner has given the most clear and best characteristic of the state, and he says, state is the name of such a community of people which are established on a definite land, irrespective of numbers, and which is usually and completely free from the control of external power, and which has a government which is obeyed by every resident. Now, the speciality of this characteristic is that it includes all the four elements of the state that we talk about in political science, that is the land, people, government, and authority. And along with this, some more following points should also be very clear, that the population of the state could be large, like that of China, India, Russia, etc., as well, or it could be minority in number, like Belgium, Luxembourg, Afghanistan, etc. Now, from the point of view of population and power, in spite of being different from each other, Russia, Afghanistan have the similar situation from the viewpoint of state. So both are states. Then authority and sovereignty are essential element of the state. But in history, we see so many such states which were not completely sovereign. Many kings of medieval times used to accept some kind of other king as their ruler in spite of being supreme in their own states. So medieval kings of Europe used to consider sacred the Roman emperor as a ruler. Now, many independent kings and nawabs of medieval India, they used to accept the authority of the emperor of Delhi. Now, even in present time, in spite of being completely sovereign countries like India, Canada, Australia, they are the part of British Commonwealth. Now, due to the historical or some other circumstances, they have established such relationships with the external power, which can partially limit their authority and sovereignty. So the character given by Garner have this scope of calling such states also as state. Now let's come back to what main or essential elements of state is, and that we have discussed in one of the separate videos. The main purpose of mentioning the characteristic of state here, as given by different scholars, is to compare with what we have already discussed about the elements of state. So state is a community of such people who have united to achieve the similar objectives. Then all these people permanently reside on a fixed land and consider it as their motherland. Now this community is completely sovereign, and there should be no control of any external power on this. And fourth, there should be such a government whose orders are followed by everyone, and this value should be a means to fulfill the objectives of that state. Now, with that definition of essential elements of state and the definitions given by different scholars about the state, let's compare and say what are other terms which are used and how the state that we refer to in political science differs from that. So there are specific states and there are common states. So we must be careful to point out that the state which is a subject of argument of political studies is not a specific state but a common state. So common state, China, France, India, etc., they are specific states. I mean, with name we are talking about. And when we talk about state itself in political science, it's a common or general essential feature which is common in all the states, whether they are from the Asian country or European or Latin American. So in ancient times, Athens, Sparta, Rome, Magad, Kaushal, Viji, etc., were also specific states. So in political studies, we do not consider these specific states, but we use these as an example to understand the subject. The common element of state present in the ancient states of history, medieval states, and states of modern times is the main subject of discussion in political studies. Now, there is another confusing term, and which is often confused, is the ideal state and real state. Now, some thinkers have tried to differentiate ideal and real states. State uh, they present an ideal picture in front of us. State, for example, we present, generally philosophers have presented an ideal picture just to get rid of the difficulties of present time or their own time, and they present an ideal model where such difficulties or such weaknesses or such corruptions in society could be removed. So the form that they present there is ideal form. There is a continuous development of state which goes on in spite of getting an ideal view of, let's say, Plato gave an ideal state, concept of ideal state. Aristotle gave an concept of ideal state. Now, in spite of that, the history in itself is an evolution, and state evolves from time to time. The small and unorganized state of the beginning era of the human history, they've been replaced by the large and well-organized states with huge number of people living in. So this is also possible that in future, a state becomes global, or the entire human society continues to live at one place and they're united in one community. People of the state will refer to a community of complete human society. So the people of the state will imply to the entire human race. The land of the state will imply the entire earth. So the international understanding of the modern age is taking us in this direction. So whenever this ideal will be materialized, then it will be maximum development of the state. So ideal is a form which can have a welfare of all the humanity. So that ideal state is something which becomes an utopia, or which we try to sort, or we try to seek in future, and we had sought in past as well. So ideal form is the best form, the ultimate form, and the real state is the one that is existing at present. Then state needs to be differentiated from another term which is often used casually as civil society. So originally, the term civil society and political society were used as coterminous. Thus, the term civil society was applied synonymously with state, but under the complex condition of the present day society, it's necessary to recognize the distinction between the two. Initially, we find the ancient Roman thinker Cicero used the term civil society in the sense of the state in the 1st century BC. But in his view, it was not merely the external structure of the state that he was talking about. It stood for a society whose members lived together as citizens, abided by civil land, abided by civil laws, and led a civilized, cultured, and dignified life. Now, in this sense, the barbarian communities did not qualify to be described as civil societies. Now, 17th century, we find English philosopher John Locke. He equated civil society with political society. Now, he observed that when people relinquish the state of nature, that is a hypothetical state in which they were living, or that was a stage of pre-state stage. There was no state as such. It was previous or prior to the formation of the state. So in that state of nature, when people they set up a government for the protection of their natural rights to life, liberty, and property, they entered into civil society. Thus, civil society is a means to establish discipline, order, and security for the human community. So, 18th century French philosopher Rousseau also treated civil society and political society as coterminous, almost similar. So, it provides for legal equality of all citizens who thus become equal in the eye of law in spite of their natural differences. Now, if we talk about the difference between these two terms, state and civil society, we find the German philosopher Hegel, he sought to distinguish civil society from the state by saying that one is based on universal egoism and another on universal altruism. So, in Hegel's view, civil society represented an organization in which an individual dealt with all other individuals, apart from the members of his family, as means to serve his self-interest. So, it was universal egoism. Now, it is a sphere of economic activity where an individual tries to know the needs of others to satisfy them in order to satisfy his own needs. So, distinction between civil society and the state is brought about using these two words, universal egoism and universal altruism. Another philosopher, Karl Marx, believed that in actual practice, civil society represented the state itself. It recognized individuals as citizens and considered equality of all individuals in the eye of law. But since economic power in the contemporary civil society was in the hands of capitalist class, law also served the interest of this capitalist and dominant class. Now, further on, we find Antonio Gramsci, an Italian Marxist. He identified two levels of superstructures of capitalist society. One, he says, it is civil society, which was nearer the base, and political society, which exercised overall control. So, civil society includes family, school, church, which transmit the values, that is, the capitalist value system, to the new generation. And political society, it included police, judiciary, prison, etc., which emphasized in maintaining that capitalist system. So, civil society embodies structure of legitimation, and political society embodies structure of coercion. So, together they form structure of domination. So, Gramsci basically makes a distinction between the two, but considers them as part of the same, which have a similar purpose, and that is to maintain the dominance of that community which is there in the ruling. So, capitalist society largely depends on the efficiency of the institution of civil society for its hold over politics, that is, political society. Now, continuing further, Herbert Marcuse, a neo-Marxist philosopher in America, argued that Hegel's distinction between civil society and the state was particularly significant for an analysis of the problem of contemporary society. He noted that under the modern capitalism, civil society had eclipsed the state, whereas under the modern communism, the state has eclipsed civil society. So, we must secure independence of both institutions in order to restore civil liberties of the citizens. In short, distinction between the state and civil society must be maintained in order to prevent authoritarianism and understand the roles that they need to perform in a system. In the contemporary discourse, the term civil society is also used to describe the intermediate association between individuals or the family and the state. So, it is the product of freedom of association. It is the bedrock of civil liberties, and this civil society serves as a channel of communication between individuals and the state and functions as a shock absorber in the event of mounting tension between individuals and the state. Now, having clarified the difference between civil society and state, let's move on to another distinction that we need to understand, that is of state and nation. So, modern states usually takes the form of nation state. The frontiers of the state are called national frontiers, and the interest of the state is described as national interest. And the character of the people of the state is called its national character. So, relations between different states are known as international relations. So, at the outset, a nation may be distinguished from nationality. Nationality usually denotes a set of people inspired by a feeling of unity based on common race, language, or could be religion, culture, or geographical compactness, common political aspirations, historical development. So most of these factors are based on birth and provides little scope for expanding the horizon of social relationship. So the feeling of nationality separates one set of people from other such sets. Sometimes this is accompanied by a sense of one's own superiority or a sense of disdain for others, which may lead to tensions, wars, and other disastrous consequences. In any case, the feeling of nationality, which makes a nation, grows from a relative narrow base. Now, some writers define nation on the basis of on same basis as nationality, and then advocate a separate state for each nationality. Now, this view is no longer held as valid in modern times. A nation grows on a much wider base. It refers to people living in a definite territory, inspired by a sense of unity, common political aspirations, common interest, common history, common destiny, though they may belong to different nationalities. In other words, groups of people of different races, with different religion, different languages, different cultures, they may live together and feel united as citizens of the same state owing to their undivided allegiance to that state. Thus, nationhood, it transcends the conditions of birth and extends to the permanent residence of a state. So, members of a nation, of course, distinguish themselves from other nations. They may sometimes be prejudiced against other people. Yet, a logical outcome of the idea of the nation, it postulates equality among nations, their coexistence and cooperations. Now, since 1920, the principle of national self-determination has been almost universally accepted, which has led to the establishment of nation states and rapid development of international law to regulate relations between nation states. Now, state and nation states, the concept is it focuses on two conflicting ideologies, that is nationalism and internationalism. Now, nationalism denotes a sense of sentiment as well as ideology. And as a sentiment, it involves an individual's attachment to his nation. And as a nationality in this sense accords primacy to his national interest over all other interests. As an ideology, nationalism postulates that structure of a state or its political organization should be focused on nationhood. In other words, each nation should constitute an independent state and each state should represent a particular nation. Now, the people who identify themselves as a natural community and claim to be the member of a nation must live under the political system of their own choice. They should enjoy an equal status and other nations in the world community, and no nation should be kept under the dominance or supremacy of other nation. And further on, if the member of a community regards themselves as a nation, they can create or invest some element of nationhood in order to strengthen this national sentiment. For example, they can evolve their own national language, adopt a national flag, national anthem, and other symbols of national identity, like national tree, national flower, national fruit, national bird, national animal, national river, etc., and declare national festival, build memorials of national heroes before whom the entire nation bows its head, and they can inspire the members of the nation through national songs, paintings, then statues depicting heroic episodes of their national history. So if a community has evolved national consciousness, but its territory is occupied by colonial or imperial power, then it can organize itself on the struggle, on the path of struggle to attain that independence from the colonial rule. Now, this type of activity is called national movement. In short, nationalism pays highest importance to one's loyalty and commitment to form a nation state. Now, another difference that we need to understand is nation state and internationalism. Now, internationalism does not regard nation state as the center of political organization, or it accepts nation as the object of individuals' undivided loyalty. It insists that mankind should evolve a larger organization in order to achieve some great objectives. Now, broadly speaking, we may discern two streams of internationalism. One is international communism, and second is a principle of international organization. International communism if we talk about, is associated with teachings of Karl Marx and Engels, and in Communist Manifesto they observed that workers have no country of their own. They exhorted workers of the world to unite to bring about socialist revolution all over the world. Now, in their view, socialist revolution was necessary for the emancipation of humanity. This could not be confined to the boundaries of a particular nation. So, as a principle of international politics, internationalism implies that in view of the growing contact between different parts of the world, a nation state is no longer capable of fulfilling all the needs of its members, not to speak of mankind as such. Hence, people of different nation states, they should form larger international organizations and cooperate to serve the common interest of mankind. So, in case of a clash between national interest and universal human interest, human rights should be given precedence. In this sense, internationalism repudiates the idea of my country, right or wrong. It insists that each nation state should accept reasonable restraint on its sovereignty in the interest of the world peace, collective security, and observance of international law. So, finally, having understood the difference between different words commonly used in place of state, like civil society, or nation state, or nation itself, or nationality, and the state word itself used at different places meaning different things. Let's take what exactly the difference is. So it is important to note here that in the earlier version of what we have talked about so far, and finally that we talked about internationalism, it believes in international cooperation in military, commercial, education, and cultural spheres in the mutual interest of nations concerned. So on that line, the United Nations is also formed, and United Nations, it calls for international cooperation in order to maintain world peace and to eradicate hunger, disease, illiteracy, and superstition from various parts of the world. So in the contemporary world, the problems of environmental pollution, terrorism, drug trafficking, they have assumed global dimensions. So internationalists should come forward to muster vigorous international cooperation to fight against these evils on the global scale. So, having explained the difference between different terms, and finally coming to the end of this lecture, I once again thank you for watching. Thank you.